Welcome to Be Around the Blockchain, where we discuss business, Web3, and the people behind it all. Our goal with the show is to create transparency with how successful investors, business professionals, and your favorite social personalities are thinking about the next evolution of technology, the blockchain. Here for our very first episode, we have none other than William Glass. He is co-founder of the Ostrich App, a financial application that sets out to improve global financial well-being. How are you doing, Will?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here and honored to be guest number one. So hopefully I don't disappoint the audience and we have a good show today.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I figure a good place to start is really just if you want to give the viewers a overview of the Ostrich app, really what you guys are up to nowadays with your application.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Yeah, so I'm CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and we've built a financial fitness app for college students and young professionals that need a simple way to start improving their finances. What we do is we essentially take groups of people working towards goals together to drive better outcomes. So we use gamification, rewards, and just that kind of social accountability of being in a group of other people that are working towards the same goal. So it's worked well in the fitness industry, and we're applying it to finances. So that's what we're doing, and we're not Web3 native, but we're exploring a lot of different Web3 use cases because we do use gamification. So there's a lot of opportunities from turning badges into NFTs and experience points into tokens and all different things. And I'm happy to talk about some of the stuff that isn't public yet, but will be, that we are doing on that front. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing, and early stage startup, but we've got app that's in the market right now. We've got a lot of people that are using it and getting some really great outcomes early on.
That's so interesting that you're tailoring the idea off of like what you've experienced with fitness applications and how that has driven success in like personal fitness goals, but you're trying to tailor it in a similar fashion to the finance industry. How did you stumble upon this kind of idea?
Yeah, I mean, my own experiences, right? I had a bunch of goals when I was coming out of college. I wanted to buy a bunch of real estate and build passive income and do all that kind of stuff. And I would do some of it, but I was never consistent and just couldn't stick to my own goals. I also saw that we've built all these really cool tools that make it easier to invest or pay down debt or track all of your accounts, but no one was really focusing at a higher level of what do I actually want to accomplish and how do I get there and who can hold me accountable to that, and also just provide the pathway to get there. And so that's where my co-founder and I just kind of started looking out there of what's going on in other industries. And, I was much more consistent going to the gym when I had a gym buddy and a group of people going with my roommate. And so it was this is so obvious. Why don't we apply the same thing that works well when it comes to other goals that we want to accomplish? But, frankly, it's easier to sit on the couch and eat chocolate cake or whatever than it is to go for a run. So that's kind of where the idea came from, but just some of my own frustrations and looking at what's out there in other industries.
How is this kind of broken out? You said people that are going towards the same kind of financial goals. Is this something they're saying, oh, I want to save this much money or pay this much debt off, and then they're just deciding to do it because they have accountability buddies? Or is there some sort of structure based off of the goals that they have that you guys have built into your app to help teach them how to do this as well?
Yeah, you've done your research, Gabriel, that's for sure. Because, we've got challenges, right? So it's not like I want to save $200. No, it's more like, hey, I want to go on this trip with my friends, right? So then you put in whatever that amount is, and then you're saving with your friends to hit that goal. Or it's like, I want to start investing, but I don't know how. Great, here's a beginner investing challenge. We'll teach you what dollar cost averaging is, and you'll just get started. So that's how we structure it. It's based around these life milestones that people have: buying a house, getting married, having babies, graduating college, buying a car, all these different things that we understand that we want to accomplish. And then we apply the financial side of okay, how do I, set myself up to get the car that I want, that I can afford, that is going to align with the other goals that I have. So.
Sure. So to come up with these guidelines, I imagine you or your co-founder have to have some kind of experience within the financial industry prior to the Ostrich app. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so my co-founder, he's a finance guy, got his MBA, did private equity, ended up in investment banking. So he's been around the block when it comes to finances. And he was living in New York City, and it's one of those places where you can make a lot of money, but it's very easy to spend all of it. So he was one of those high earners, but wasn't really saving any money just because rent's expensive, and you want to go out to this place and that place, and next thing you're back to zero at the end of the month. So that's that's where we applied finances. But I also just got really interested myself, like consumed a lot of personal finance content, have gone to some of the different FinCon and like financial independence, retire early movements, and just done a lot of my own research over the years to really understand what's out there, what are the options that are out there, what's already working in certain respects. And so we've taken some of those challenges, like I call them challenges, but like there's debt pay down methodologies that we've just turned into debt challenges that are more fun and social. So like the snowball method or avalanche, which is just different ways to pay down debt. And same thing with savings. So we've taken what's already out there and then built some of our own and developed some of our own on top of that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the things around finance and money can be stressful. It can be stuffy. I love strategizing around investments, but I hate trying to like actually manage my finances. Right. And it's way too stressful as a business minded person. I don't think that way. And so I spend way too much time on it, to be fair. I probably spend at least a couple hours a week just going through, okay, is based off of new market conditions and my pivoting and how I'm going to execute this investment or this trade or this, make sure I'm managing my cash flow properly. It can be overwhelming. So curious, like your ICP, are you targeting people that are in certain income ranges with certain goals? Are you like across the board, no matter what stage of your financial journey you're at, you have something for them? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we're not targeting people that are super wealthy, right? You've got your own financial advisor, you're good, right? Like you don't need us. We're targeting people that are just getting started, really. So, if you're in college, even if you do come from a family that has money or you don't, you're paying your way through college, you got student loan debt, right? You're still trying to build something on your own for the first time. And so that's really who our target is. And then young professionals that have just kind of graduated and they've now got their first jobs, careers, and they're starting to make some of these other decisions around finances. And so, we're not replacing budgeting apps. We're not replacing investing apps. That's not what we're doing. We're just providing a missing layer that is that accountability, as well as just, pathway of how do I have success. So that's how we think about it. And that's who we're targeting are those, college students and young professionals.
Sure. So bringing education in a fun way, though. I love it. I'm
and
curious.
Action, right? Like action's what's missing, because you can educate yourself all day. Yeah. But like education doesn't lead to better. Like you could read about all the investments that you do, but if you don't do anything at the end of the hour and a half or however many hours you spend at the end of the week, then like you just educated yourself, which isn't bad, right? There's nothing wrong with education, but when it's not paired with action, that's where we come in. It's like, let's just focus on what's the first step that you need to do from an action, as well as what's the education you need to know to feel confident in that first step.
I love that you bring up action. So you had mentioned early on that you've always been ambitious. You've always wanted to go out and try to start something, start this company, start this venture, and ultimately, like nothing really came of it. I poked around your LinkedIn and I saw you were an account executive at one point. So like you've always had this drive of wanting to like do more, get paid for your efforts. I get that as an account executive myself. So I'm curious at what was different about this being from what I can tell, the first like big venture that you actually truly took action on, and it's coming to fruition and really getting to a point of not really any return, right? You're all in and we want to see how far this thing can go. So what was the difference with the Ostrich App and why you decided to do that here?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, right? So I was in sales, right? Account executive, did that. Coming out of college, the only thing that I knew, well, I spent a year in Thailand. I taught English to the State Department, did a Fulbright overseas, and lived on $500 stipend a month, which, wow. In the middle of rural Thailand, it's pretty easy to save money.
Oh, yeah.
There's really nothing you can spend on. Even if you do, it's like $1. So like, for a good meal. So you're not going to get very far in terms of spending. But yeah, I came back, and the only thing I knew was like, okay, I need to like support myself, and I want to get paid what I'm worth. And all the job offers I'm getting were like entry level positions for like 40K, and I was like, I know that I'm worth more, and if I work harder than Joe Schmo next to me or Sally Sue, like I want to get paid for being a better performer. And there's very few jobs that allow you to do that, and sales is one of them. And so that's how I ended up in sales, and ended up doubling my OTE the first year. I was supposed to make 60K and made 120.
Wow.
So like just absolutely crushed it. But that set me up to be in a financial position down the line and continue that success for a few years, to start something. But I think you can probably relate to this, Gabriel. At some point, you're selling a ton of deals for this company, and yeah, you're making a commission, but you're making like this much of the commission versus everything else. And so I wanted the opportunity to capture that upside as well as build something that was more meaningful than, I was helping startups and then worked in the market research space for an AI company, but like it wasn't the impact that I wanted to have. So it was a combination of those things.
Sure. So you think it was kind of a timing and preparation as well as that idea sparking all right in that same moment.
Absolutely, but I should say that the idea was a very slow, like it sparked and it went out, and it sparked and it went out, and it sparked and it went out. So like I came up with the idea of like wrote like more of like a manifesto of like a philosophy of like here's what's wrong in the personal finance space and financial services in general. And there was no business. It was just like this is what I'm frustrated with. And that was like 2017, and then like I would forget about it. I would get interested in it and try to do research and then forget about it for a couple months and then come back to it 2 or 3 months later. And that happened for like 2 or 3 years, before finally I got to a point where I was like, all right, there's something here. I've now got the capital saved up to support myself. I've reconnected with my co-founder who I knew from college, but we reconnected when I moved up to New York. And yeah, just kind of like timing aligned, and I was like, screw it. Let's see what happens.
Gotcha. So did you just go all in like right from the get-go? I mean, obviously you had been doing a good job saving and kind of preparing for that to be able to say, yeah, if I want to take 6 months off the work and really like focus on this, you can. And if nothing comes of it, you're still okay. Was that kind of the scenario that you ran into?
Yeah, it's been over 6 months though, but yeah, yeah, essentially.
Now.
Yeah, now. But yeah, I mean, that was the idea. I was like, I'm super frustrated. Like, I know that I've had success in sales. Like, if I want to go get another sales job in tech, like, I'm gonna do fine. I'll know I'll make good money. I'll be all right. But like, I just need to do this, and see what happens, because it's one of those things where you look back and it's like, this is something that I would regret not doing. Like, I would never regret doing it, but I would regret not taking the risk, of starting something and something that I believe in and somebody else that had kind of come on board. Now, I could have been a lot smarter, and we could have been a lot smarter about how we prepared first-time founders. There's a lot of things that, it's taken us a lot longer to get to the point of where we are. So wish I would have done a little bit more research and networking and talked to other startup founders. But, it's been a good journey. But yeah, that's kind of been the process so far.
So the type of people I imagine are a lot of listeners are in, the position they're in is, they're ambitious. They've got all of these dreams and all of these ideas. I fall into this category frequently where, maybe we're in a financial position where we can take time off. Maybe we want to start it while we're doing our 9 to 5 and we're willing to make the time. But if you scroll on TikTok for 2 hours, you get 47 different ways that you can, make $1 million, right? There's a million different types of businesses. There's a million different courses you can buy to educate yourself. Ultimately, we've kind of covered, like, it comes down to taking action on something. But how do you, as somebody who's very ambitious, and I feel very competent to do a lot in almost any aspect of business, right? Like, I can start an Amazon business if I put my head down and do it. I can become an influencer on social media. I can, start a tech company or a software company. I can go and start coaching courses, right? Like, there's a million different ways that I can spin this. How what do you tell somebody when they're like, I've got all these things and there's so much noise and I feel like I could do all of it. I don't know what the best route is or what route I even necessarily want to go in, that I know I wouldn't get bored. As somebody who has ADHD, I get bored very easily. I move like every 12 months. It's so bad. But like, what do you tell somebody who just feels overwhelmed? They want to take a jump, want to dive into something and really be able to get to the other side of where I'm not making 8% of these deals that are being closed, a smaller percentage if they continue to be a customer, but I want
Yeah.
the full slice of the pie and ultimately to be able to make a big impact on my customers and the people that I'm able to hire and mentor throughout the process.
So first off, that's amazing that you feel the way that you do, right? Where you're like, I can go learn something and take these skills. I think a lot of people can, if they dedicate the time. But to your point, it's like, what are you gonna actually stick to, right? Like, yeah, you could go create an Amazon, whatever, fulfillment by Amazon, drop shipping type business, but like, is that really what you want to do? Like, is that really that exciting to you? And for some people, it will be. Maybe it's like if it's a specific product category, or like something that they're really passionate about. But yeah, I mean, there's a million ways, right? As you said, scrolling through TikTok for 2 hours, you'll see 100 different ways that you can start a business. But I think just start exploring those interests, right? Like you're starting this podcast right now, and we're going to have conversations like this with people like me, and probably people that are much smarter than me in the future, right? That understand Web3, and like you've obviously got an interest in that, and that's a good step, because right now you're essentially getting the opportunity to learn and get a slice of what other people have done that they've enjoyed and what you might enjoy, right? You get to select who's going to be on your show, right? You get to pick people's brains that you want to have conversations with. So one, I think that's a great way to go about it, right? Like you're essentially documenting your own journey of going down Web3, learning more about it. So that's a very smart thing that you're doing. But I would also just, experiment. Like if you've got an idea that you might like something, what's the like quickest way that you can test if that's going to be something that you're really going to enjoy? And it might be starting a fulfillment by Amazon company and trying it for 2 weeks. And if it's like after 2 weeks, you know what, I'm not that interested, or wow, this is there's something here, then dig into it. So whatever that area is, but you don't have to like go all in. You can dedicate a little bit of time, but give yourself enough time to figure out if it's something that you like. But if it is, recognize that you will have some ups and downs. So at some point you might be like, man, I don't know if I want to do this. But in the first 2 weeks, you should be able to figure out if it excites you enough that you can push through those low, motivation times that we all have in our lives.
Awesome. I love that. I want to go back to Ostrich a little bit. And you mentioned as you're, when you were getting started and kind of going through, your current stage based off of, first time founders, that there are some things that you could have done better. It sounds like some are on the networking side. Would love to hear a little bit about like, what are some of those things, if you could tell 3 years ago yourself, hey, we're going to go on this journey. Here's what we'd rather start focusing on now to really set us up for success. What are those things that you feel like could have made a big impact on where you guys are at now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I could list out, Gabriel. I think I'll since we're both VFriends holders, I'll take this this approach to it. Right, the documenting what you're doing. Like I wish I would have shared more about what I was building on the day to day, what I was like needed help on LinkedIn, on Instagram, because I got so like, as an entrepreneur, you're building these things, you get so in your own zone and you're like, oh man, I need to do research, I need to do that, and I haven't built anything yet. So there's like kind of this imposter syndrome that I dealt with, and maybe not everyone deals with, but I think most people do, where you're like building this thing but you haven't built it yet. And like that would just be really helpful, because the times that I've talked about what we're going through, documenting it, like here's the pitch competition, people will reach out and provide advice, or are willing to sit down and talk you through a sales strategy if that's what you need to develop, or do customer research because they're like, oh, I'm interested in personal finance. I'll tell you all the stuff that I hate about it, and hopefully you can build something for me that I'll like. So I think that's one thing that you can do, is like document and share what you're building with others. Sometimes like the build in public movement. I think that's a really smart thing to do. And I haven't heard any founder that's been like, man, I wish we would have stayed quiet about what we were doing for longer. Like, I've never heard a founder say that, um, at this point in time. And then I think the other thing is that there's a lot that you can do without, like, we didn't raise capital. So we bootstrapped up until earlier this year. So we raised our first cash in January. I mean, we're still in the process of raising. We haven't raised a ton of money. But there's a lot you can do without raising capital. And you can get your company or idea pretty far along. The other thing is that the further you get your company along, the more you keep of it. But also, as a first-time founder, if you're going to go try to raise venture capital like we did early on, the way that they can figure out if you're going to be good or not is not based on your idea. You have no track record, right? If you were a founder that had exited 3 businesses, they'll write you a check on an idea. But if you're just a first-time founder, you've got more to prove, which is fine. It's fair. It makes sense. So that's something as well as, like, focus on the product, the problem that you're solving, and really digging into that. So I think that those are some things that I wish I would have done and would have done differently.
Sure. So, I mean, ultimately, build in public and leverage the resources around you that come from that. What I have
Exactly.
found, it's a good point, because I found anytime I've ever had a question or wanted help on something, people go out of their way. When you surround yourself with the right people, they go out of their way to help you, right? When you're in the right environments, the right groups of people, whether in real life or on social media. And it's funny how we call it in real life versus social media. They're different, but they're kind of the same thing. I feel like I've never really ran into a scenario where I just got no comment or nobody reaching out or nobody willing to at least point me in the right direction. And it's so powerful because, one, the free resources, right? And it starts to create community. And that's so powerful, especially as you're building. And if you keep doing that, you start to build people who are bought into you and your journey, and who knows, maybe even future customers or investors when you do get to a point where you're going to start raising capital. Because they've
Yeah,
seen you building up to this point. They know this isn't something that you thought out of your car 2 weeks ago and now you're trying to raise capital. You've been putting in the work up to this point, and now you're ready for that next step.
exactly. Yeah, building those relationships, right? People love to give back and help and share. So you got to ask for that, or just just build relationships. And it doesn't have to be like this complex thing. To your point, just ask some pointed questions, and people will be happy to help. You'd be surprised.
Oh,
Are
that's
you working
awesome.
on anything in particular? I mean, obviously you've got this podcast now, but like, where's your entrepreneurial head at?
Yeah, so for the moment, I mean, it goes in a million directions, right? I was mostly speaking from my heart when I asked you that question of like all these things, because I know ultimately my goal is to make an impact on people. I want to give them something, like show them what's possible, show them that no matter what you come from, I don't come from much. I'm building everything on my own. I am bootstrapping my life, right? And I've got student debt. I'm coming out of credit card debt, and I'm doing whatever I have to do to, one, make sure that I'm being compensated for my worth, my skill set and abilities, and ability to empathize and relate with people, and just connect with people is so powerful. And it's such a high value skill that there's no way I'm going to go work for somebody that doesn't value that. And so to your point, I found a lot of my skill set ties into sales, which is very fortunate because, I mean, if you want to make more money, then you got to work harder, right? To sell more, which is cool. But I'm very passionate about building relationships, building businesses, and just ultimately something being like that you can be proud of. But it really comes from a place of wanting to make a big impact on the people around me and maximize that reach. So the idea behind this podcast is, if I see frequently that the people that I interact with on social media, the people that I interact with in person, are being impacted personally, whether it's just in a small moment or on a larger scale by interacting with me, why not do that how can I scale that, right? And the best way to scale that at this point is leveraging social media. And as I mentioned before, I'm surrounding myself with great community, a great base of people, of hard workers, of entrepreneurs, of people that are creative and innovative and want to get into the future of technology, which we'll transition into here in a minute. And ultimately, I want to be able to not only share my thoughts and ideas around that, not only pick their brains, but be able to do it on a platform where I can share that with everyone. I want everybody to have access to the people and the resources and the communities that I do. And so that's what ties it into being able to start this podcast in the first place.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? I mean, you figured out your why, which I think is what's really powerful. A lot of people, and obviously, like it might develop and you'll refine it as you go, but that's huge, right? You're trying to provide this resource, something that's of value both to yourself but also to others, and share that. And I think that's huge, right? That's what you need when you're starting any endeavor. Is like, what's the why behind it? Because to our TikTok example earlier, there's 100 different ways, well more than 100 different ways to make money, but like, why the one that you're choosing, right? And it sounds like you've got that really strong why, which is super, super important.
And frankly, it's another excuse to talk to people, right? Like I genuinely love socializing. I find people so fascinating, and I talk about it like I'm an alien. I'm like, wow, people are just so interesting. I don't get it. But it's another reason I am, as you said, we're both VFriend1 holders. We have VCon coming up, thanks to Gary Vaynerchuk. So pumped for his conference and the absurd amount of people we're about to meet, and such amazing people at that. What would you say? We're about to go to this big mega conference here in under 30 days now. What are some of your goals that you think about when you're about to go to something like that at that scale with that caliber of people that we're surrounding ourselves by? And by caliber, it's not necessarily just financial success or business success, but just like the way the values that they embody as a whole. The culture around this conference is very different than I think any of the other ones we've experienced. So where's your head at going into something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I bought my VFriends1 was because of the conference. Like, I was like, cool, like this is an NFT that I can test out, and like I can do the math, and like, yeah, it's not bad. If this is going to be the next South by Southwest, that seems like a pretty good deal. So I mean, I think my intention is to try to build some strong relationships, right? To like what we've been talking about. Definitely want to meet a lot of people, and that's on the agenda. But I think even beyond just meeting a bunch of people is like building a relationship, which I think is different than just here's a business card, have a handshake, and that's it. It's like really getting to know folks, and I think that's what I'm really excited about. And to your point, I'm excited to meet the OG VFriend1 holders, and obviously Gary's got an insane network, so I imagine that we'll probably bump into a lot of pretty famous people and those kind of circles, which I think will be a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just to build relationships, and obviously if I can find and help other people, that would be really helpful. And then also, I'm looking for folks that can add value to what I'm building at Ostrich. So I think those are the things: build relationships, figure out how I can add value, and then also, if there's anyone else that's interested in financial wellness, that might be a good partner. So, and I also convinced my dad to come. So like he's gonna be coming. I don't have a ticket for him yet, but he's like, I don't need to go to the conference. Like I can like go to the other events and all that stuff. But yeah, Papa Glass I'm introducing him to NFTs. So.
Oh my goodness. So when you're getting somebody new into the space, I imagine you've had conversations with a lot of people that aren't familiar with the space. Maybe your partner wasn't when you guys first started exploring it. How are you having those conversations with what a lot of people refer to as normies, but genuinely just, I mean, a majority of the world that doesn't even know about this thing outside of seeing monkey pictures on the internet every now and then, right? But I feel like it's been very quiet the last few months, and so no one's really talking about it outside of NFT Twitter. So how are you having these conversations and introducing these people that you think would be interested in the space to it?
I think it's kind of sharing my own journey. Like when I bought the VFriends, I reached out to a couple people that I knew like consumed Gary's content and you know followed him, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I don't know what this thing is." So I didn't really tell anyone. I was like, "Well, I'm gonna buy this thing because this could be a really terrible move and like could just blow 2 grand on this NFT thing." Um, but so I, and like I said, I was for the conference, so I bought it and then kind of forgot about it. And then when the PLP launches, right? Is that what it was? It hasn't, they haven't happened in a while, but like
Yeah.
the partner launches, that's when I was like, oh, like maybe I'll get one of these. And so that's when I got plugged in again, and saw the value of the NFT, and I was like, holy crap, like this thing's like worth 20 grand now. And like at the time I was like, wow, like, you know, now it's like double that, but for like a floor base NFT. But I think, you know, just explaining the utility, because to me that's like NFTs are technology, right? It's just another technology, and it's what you do with the technology that matters, not the picture of the Bored Ape or the picture of the VFriend, right? It's like what you do with the tech that I think is going to be really valuable long term. And so that's what I try to talk about and share my experience of like why I bought this thing. And then obviously you can hook people with like it went up, but I'm never telling anyone to go buy a bunch of NFTs. It's always like, yeah, like there's going to be some interesting use cases. It's not there yet. But just I think sharing, and I've done that like light, you know, not blasting everyone with like NFTs are the next big thing, but I convinced, yeah, like I said, I convinced my my co-founder to take a look. I was like, I think we should look into this. Plus, it helps being in fintech because everyone's apparently in Web3 now. So like everyone
Really?
was talking about it. Well, I mean, I'm just saying that everyone's like, you know, throws crypto or blockchain or Web3 now
Ah.
on a pitch deck so that they can raise an extra 10 million or whatever the valuation they're going for is. That's slowed down now, but that was definitely the case at the end of last year. So we just started exploring it, and like, you know, I shared this is a really interesting project that's doing something unique, and like following one project and figuring out what they did that was really successful and what I liked, and like what I think the utility could be. But my whole process of doing that was thinking of like what could we do, what could I do that would be really interesting and move this forward from a utility perspective. So that's how I've tried to approach it. What about you? How have you approached the conversations with non NFT native crypto folks?
Sure, I've definitely been both extremes. When I first ran into it, because I started around the same time as you with the VFriend. One was my first NFT, and you know, like I said, I don't come from much. So when I saw it hitting 8, 10, 15 grand for a base level NFT, and I spent $2,500 on it, I was just mind blown because I'd never seen that much money before at the time, and it was just one, it was hard to hold it. That was probably the hardest part. I think after it continued to go up and then doubled and then even went even higher and then it dropped back down a little bit. I think that was a lot easier to hold it because I'm like, I've seen it hit something higher, and so I just can't. I gotta diamond hand it now. But I also, like you said, as I continued to dive into the technology and understand what was actually happening, not just the picture or even just the operator, purely just what this technology has the capability of doing. There's almost a sentimental value of that to me because it was my first experience in the space, which means, I mean, in order for me to sell it, it's gonna have to take
Yeah.
some crazy amount. But to answer your
Did you get into
question,
crypto before that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Answer that, and
no,
then
you're
I'll.
okay. You're okay. So yeah, I actually got into crypto back in 2015. Yeah, it was 2015. I bought 2 Bitcoin at like $900 a Bitcoin. And funny story, I actually, a year or so later, and it might have been closer to 2017, somebody's going to fact check me. But it was around that time, and I was going to Italy for 3 months. And at the time, the same way I was crazy about watching the floor price when I first got my NFT, I was nonstop watching crypto prices change every 2 seconds. Right, so half the time I'm at work, I'm sitting here like swiping up on Coinbase trying to get it to refresh. I also bought some Litecoin and a little bit of Ethereum at the time, which I should have held all of it. But when I went to Italy, I told my dad, or my dad was like, "Hey, do you want me to manage it? I'll grow it." And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't do research like I did in NFTs, so I'm like, "Yeah, here's my 2 Bitcoin, grow it." And he supposedly turned it into almost 16 Bitcoin at the time, which was crazy. It was a lot of money. And then it just disappeared. Whatever exchange or thing he was involved in, I don't know any of the details. It went offline and all of the Bitcoin was gone. And
Was
to
it
this day,
the Canadian one? Starts with a Q. There's a Netflix documentary. Have you seen that? Because that would be the timing roughly.
so my girlfriend just showed me that documentary. I haven't watched it yet, but it hit a nerve, and I'm like, I'm not ready to watch that yet because
Yeah.
it
Anyway,
might
okay.
be. I'll have to ask my dad, but yeah. So all that Bitcoin was gone, and
Jeez.
to this day, I tell my dad when it hit like 70K, like you owe me a lot of money. And to be fair, I definitely would have sold it at like $5,000 a piece. There's no way I would have held it at that time. I didn't have the strength to do it. When I was like in college, I probably would have blown it on something stupid. But yeah, so I've understood roughly the blockchain as a whole for a while. I just never explored NFTs until after I heard Gary was the first person I heard about it through when he started talking about it. And my natural instinct is to go in and think, okay, well, like I want to understand I like to understand how things work, right? So I watched every single one of his podcasts that he was on where he was explaining utility and what that means and all of the different applications and why this is so big. And I have not heard him get that excited since social media. And
Yeah.
he was beyond right about that. And there's track records of him being beyond right about the internet, right? And so I'm like, I used to sit in my dorm and think, man, I wish I would have been born 20 years earlier when I could have been around for Web 1 and, made my way through that and been an early adopter of that and I would have replaced Mark Cuban, which is where he made his millions, right? Billions now. That's where he got his start. And I'm like, man, it stinks. Woe is me. And then it clicked when I started hearing Gary talk about this. Like, this is a shot. This is happening again at an even larger scale. I'm not missing it. And so there was no chance I wasn't going to start diving into the technology and understand it. But to answer your question, and there was a long little like history of Gabriel and NFTs and crypto. But the way that I've gone about it, one, I get so excited about things that I just like scare people off sometimes. I'm a passionate dude, and so I like my best friend who's in Florida. He is super into NFTs now. Him and I like have the same energy, so it didn't scare him much. He also didn't have capital to play with at the time to like dive into it, and now he regrets it, of course. But he got a VFriend 2 off of one book game token. He got
Nice.
a
That's some
friends
good
spot
luck.
off of one. He has the best luck I've ever seen, and like if I would not be surprised if he landed a black cat. So he was good, but then I had some other friends where I'm just like trying, and my girlfriend too, trying to get her to understand all of these things, and it's just a bunch of gibberish. And it's interesting because I feel like the person it's not necessarily just on like us, it's on the people have to want to know about it. They have to want to learn about the technology. If they don't want to, they're just going to shut you out and label you as crazy, right? Until,
Yeah.
probably 5 years from now when it's not so crazy anymore. And then we'll be the geniuses. Hopefully this ages well and I'll clip it.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll revisit this in 5 years and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll set a reminder. That'll be funny. Hopefully not too funny, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a mindset thing that when they want to know about it, it's a lot easier to calm down and really take the time. Like my girlfriend, after a couple of months, started to just see. This was probably during like the peak craze back in November, and she decided, okay, well, he's really passionate about this thing, so I want to take time and learn about it. And so I put together a PowerPoint. I pulled up all of the big projects that were going on at the time. So it was mainly CryptoPunks and Bored Ape, and I pulled up a bunch of rug pulls that were coming up that you just knew were rug pulls if you knew what you were looking for. And I helped her because that was a big topic of conversation with the horrible projects, right? And so I helped explain to her like what you look for, what makes this worth 40 ETH at the time. Man, I should have bought it on the spot. And what makes this like completely worthless, and why do I know this is going to disappear? And we actually figured out when the launch date was and tracked it a week later, and you couldn't find anything about the project because it sold and then they disappeared. So I was right. Um, but it was really cool that she like actually took the time to understand it, and now she just runs around saying GM and wag me because that was like her biggest. Those were her biggest takeaways.
She picked up some
But
new,
yeah.
yeah, some new lingo.
Oh
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So like like my girlfriend's not like, she, she kind of got interested because I just kind of shared what was going on with what we're doing, and like I talked through my own projects, and like she's a teacher and started thinking through like, is there something I could do with my kids? And like she drops NFT references in her middle school class, and like, there's certain kids that are like totally get it. Like she put a bored ape in like her one of her presentations, and like they're like, oh, you know about that. So anyway, but my point being is like, so slowly got her interested just through like, wow, like Gary Vee's doing this, and like I'm getting this free thing, or like, oh, there's like this friends list and this book games thing, and she, like, I'll listen to Gary Vee's podcast. She's not a huge fan of like his delivery style and all that stuff. She
Sure.
thinks it's really annoying. But she's like, I think this is a really interesting project. Like, how do I get a V Friends too? And she like really wanted a V Friends too. And I was like, well, you have to buy book game tokens and do all that. And she's like, I just want a V Friends too. And so actually, I had 2 book game tokens. I got 1 friends list, and I actually gave it to her. So she just
Oh no
bought
way.
her first NFT. Yeah, I mean, we obviously get one as Series 1 holders. So I mean, if she
Sure.
gets a really rare one, I'll be a little jealous. But um, it was like one of those things where it's like, I'm willing, if you are actually gonna like buy this and like get into it, like I will give you this friend, like I'll let you get into it.
Oh, that's so
Um,
worth it.
and so it's cool. So she's just super excited. Like I mean, obviously there were some delays with the tech stuff, just like with V Friends One. And every day she's like, is it live? Can we do? Can we meet?
Yeah.
Can we meet? Can we meet? Um, so it's been really funny seeing her get into it.
It's so exciting. And the thing I always told people when they would ask me about it is you'll understand when you have skin in the game, especially if your first project doesn't like drop to zero, right?
Yeah.
And I have been asked this question on what would you do if the very first project you minted was a rug pull? And honestly, it would have been really hard for me to go and keep exploring the technology. I think it would have been dependent on if I had done the research as in depth as I did prior to buying it in the first place, like what happened with VFriends, because there was such a long period where he was educating us prior to minting. But if I would have just jumped in and bought a slushy NFT, which was like a big rug pull they got arrested, which was super cool. Um, it would have been hard, and a couple of my friends that I taught about it, I told them over and over again the things to not like never buy projects that are at the time it was always a never. Now it's a little bit looser, but never buy somebody if they have an anonymous founder, red flag. If they are just showing really cool roadmaps but have proven nothing at this point, doesn't mean anything. And what did they do? Went and bought those projects because they got super into the hype and the FOMO, right? And this celebrity was hyping it up, and then they got rug pulled. And they're like, I can't, like, they lost, $1,000, $2,000, which is no small amount of money. And they're like, why did you show me this? And it definitely started creating some hostility, which was tough. We're all good now, but they're definitely not in the space as much as they would have been if they would have, minted a VFriends one or, um, you know, there's a lot of money talk around NFTs right now, and it bugs me because, and like I get it, right? Like I've made money, I've lost money in the space on other projects as well, and it's been fun and it's been heartbreaking and it's been a roller coaster of emotions. I get people make money in the space, but it's all people talk about, and we're missing the technology side of this, which is what makes this tech so big, the utility behind it, right? We're missing what's actually happening, and we're just like letting ourselves, the whole space, become about overwhelmed with greed, and it's not healthy for the space. It's not going to destroy the space and it's going to like disappear. The blockchain's here to stay, but man, is it not healthy for the space or anybody who wants to learn about it.
I mean, it's, yeah, you're right. It's definitely not healthy. It's not healthy in general, right? Anything that you're just like only to talk about the money and the greed, right? Like Wall Street in the '80s, and like even the housing market in 2008 and the mid 2000s, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, you're definitely right, and I think that actually this kind of cooling off period that we have is actually probably a good thing for the long term longevity of the space, because the projects that are actually adding value, the creative founders are still doing great things, right? Like Kevin Rose's project Moonbirds, the PFP project, like that one, insane what's happened, right? But like
Yeah.
he's an experienced founder, creator, he's got a following and is doing something really unique. So yeah, we definitely need to shift, but I think it comes down to like the creators in the space, right? Because people are going to flock wherever the money is, and that's fine. It is what it is. People are making money, and that's great. But where's the actual value? Like, how do we actually take the technology and make it valuable for the things that we care about, right? Like, how can we use NFTs to what we're talking about, like with these conversations and educating people? Like, how could we use the technology to push that forward? Um, and I think the people that are doing that are great for the space, right? Like Gary Vee, Kevin Rose. Obviously, I think what you're doing here with this podcast is an example of that as well. But yeah, we got to get away from the money, money, money.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, I think there will always be an aspect of it that's financially driven, financially motivated. I will not sit here and say that is 0% of the reason I'm in the space, right? But at the same time, and initially I didn't go into it trying to make money. I went into it, I didn't know anything about it. Ultimately, I wanted to invest in Gary Vee, and this is the first time he's ever asked me for money in the multiple years that I followed him, and he's given me so much intangible value that the least I could do is invest in him, and he's still going to give me a mega conference where I get to go socialize with a bunch of people that are like-minded, right? So it was a win-win no matter what happened. And it's been cool that it's worked out well this far, and I believe that it will in the long, long term. But I think, to your point, yes, the creators have, like the proven operators in the space, the Gary V's, the Kevin Rose, the Yuga Labs, have a responsibility to keep pushing this technology forward and showing what's possible and innovating. But I also think that everybody in this space has a responsibility to, especially if you're thinking about the technology in the way that you and I are talking about. If you're thinking about it as the third generation of the Web 3, then we need to be doing our part in finding ways to spark ideas, whether between conversations or just with ourselves, or on social media, or executing on projects, or taking Web 2 things that we're doing like the Ostrich App and incorporating different ways of leveraging Web 3. And I think that we have a responsibility to continue to try and drive and innovate and move this technology forward if it's going to have a shot at mass adoption.
Absolutely, I agree. What do you think we can do, right? Like, I'm happy to talk about like what we're thinking through from an ostrich perspective, but like that's great and like completely agree. But like I'm thinking from a tactical perspective, anyone listening to this that is really interested in Web3, like how do we push it forward if we're not the creator, or like in what ways do you think we can do that? And I'm happy to share my thoughts as well, but curious what you think on that, Gabriel.
Absolutely. So I've never thought of myself as a creative because I always viewed creative, ironically, in a box where it's I can't paint, I can't draw, I can't even sign my name and it look pretty. Like, it's horrible. So if I ever get famous and have to sign something, it's not going to be good.
Sorry, I was told I should be a doctor as a kid because my handwriting was so
Yeah,
bad. Like that was the
absolutely. So I've never viewed myself as one of those creatives, but I also personally I view myself as an operator. I know that I am strategic, and I'm creative in business. Business is my canvas. So I think everybody, just the way you have to think about it is, what's your canvas? What are you creative at? What are your abilities, and how can you go and tie in this new technology into those aspects of life? Because ultimately, this is going to impact every single industry. This is not something that is only going to impact the financial industry. It's going to impact tickets and hospitality. It's going to impact how we buy houses and cars. It's going to impact literally everything on a day to day that we do and how we operate as a whole. It's all going to be on the blockchain for a lot of reasons that we're not going to get into because it's a little too technical. But ultimately, like it's going to have we have to massively adopt it because the technology is so abundant. And so there's ways that we haven't even thought of to use this technology for good, to help make our lives easier, to ultimately just make it easy to adopt, right? And half of the people that are big creators in the space didn't set out to do it. They didn't set out to build these massive projects that they now have. They were just doing what they loved, or doing what they're good at, and finding a way to incorporate that in Web3 with the new technology. And you do that enough and you document it and put it out there, whether it's a podcast or a tweet or TikTok or some combination of it all, and Gary Vee sees it and retweets it, and then everybody in his 3 million following goes and checks it out, like, your life could change overnight, right? Just from doing, and you're already doing what you love, and you're just trying to do your best with whatever audience you have to make the space better and move it forward. And so that's where I think we all, no matter big or small, no matter what our checkbooks look like, we have the ability to make an impact.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, what's your canvas, right? Like, what's your unique ability, and what are you doing, and how can you drive it forward? And I mentioned this, so I should probably share it rather than just teasing it. But we thought through a project for Ostrich for a while, and originally it was going to be this big PFP project, because that's just what was in fashion, and realized that that isn't something that makes sense for us right now. Maybe in the future. Definitely in the future, but right now it just doesn't. And like, it doesn't align with what we need from a business. We want to do, turn the badges into NFTs and tokens, but we're not there yet. So like, what can we do to push the space forward, but also adds value? And so we've come up with this idea, and I can't find any other projects that have ever done this, but we're doing a rookie card for our company. So like a startup rookie card, an Ostrich rookie card. And we haven't settled on the amount, but it's going to be like a couple hundred max, right? And we're going to give away most of them to people that have been supportive and supported us. Because at the end of the day, like, that's the intent, is like, how do I thank the people that have had the conversations, like as I suggested earlier to the audience, of like reaching out to people, like, how do I compensate that person that spent an hour with me talking about helping refine my pitch before the pitch competition? How do I help this person that made the intro that got us our first customer? I don't really have a way to compensate them, right? Like, we don't have any money, we don't have but what can I do? And so that's kind of the idea of like all the people that have supported throughout the years, like of this journey so far, is like it's built in, kind of like as you go through your career in sports, like as a company, there's different stages of the business. So we're going to do a rookie card. It's for our pre-seed round before we've really raised. And then once we raise and we hit other business milestones, we'll do a larger one. And the idea is just to give back. And off of that, we can build really cool things that we're going to do. But we're doing a physical card. We've got like really cool ideas that we're going to be implementing in the next probably 2 to 3 months. But I think, from all the research I've done, no company's ever done a rookie card. And then obviously no one's done an NFT version of that as well. So we're going to try to be a first, create a collectible, and as we grow and scale and the brand builds, the value will just naturally be there, is the idea. So somebody that might have spent an hour with us early on, hopefully when we're IPO and we're $1 billion company, that'll be worth a lot, because there's only a couple hundred of them. So like thinking through like creative things that you can do. Again, it's not like earth shattering, right? Like there's like small projects that are out there, but that's something that's unique. And if it works, other startups, other companies might copy and paste that. Because could you imagine having an original NFT from Apple or Amazon or Tesla, right? Like, how valuable would those be? And we're not. And yeah. So anyway, so that's the idea, and that's something that we're pretty much going to be giving away to people, right? Besides minting the gas fees
Sure.
to mint, but like giving it away to people, because it's just a cool thing that we can do, and it's a way to say thank you. but it drives the space forward in just a very, very small capacity. And it could be a huge success or it could be a total failure. But hopefully, hopefully it's a success, and regardless, somebody else can learn from that and hopefully find a better way to engage their audience or say thank you off of the back of what we're going to be doing. So.
No, I love that. And I mean, if nothing else, you get to learn, right? Because you're taking action, you're trying out new things, and that's what this is about. And the thing I love about NFTs specifically, there's a lot of aspects of Web3, but NFTs is it's a contract. It's not just a PFP image, right? So regardless of what that rookie card looks like, if 5 years from now somebody else does something earth-shattering and you realize, oh my goodness, that could be a great idea to incorporate into our business, you could create a new project, but you can also have that alpha project that you created 5 years ago and add whatever utility that is to that contract, right? And really impact the people that believed in you from the get-go. So it's something that it can always develop, it can always be added to, and people forget that. Everyone asks, what's the utility of this project? And, hopefully there is some aspect of utility if it's not a designated collectible. But also remember, if you're buying into an operator that wants to operate this for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're doing this for life, think about the utility. They're not just going to not add utility over the course of like this technology developing, right? And you're going to be a holder being this early in something really special. And they're going to reward you for that in the long run.
Exactly, right? Yeah, and I think that's the key is like, just because you sell it once, unlike, other things, you sold it once and that was it. And there really isn't a great way to like add value back unless it was a digital good and you had their contact information. But otherwise, that was kind of it. And now with NFTs, you have this opportunity to like not sell something to somebody once, but build a relationship in the long term and add value. So, yeah.
No, I love that.
So many cool things that you can do with NFTs. Such a cool space.
It really is. And I'm very fascinated to see what it's going to do. Like social media took a big portion of people that are, early millennials, Gen X's, or Gen Z's, and they're all becoming content creators full time, right? Like they don't work for a company, they work for themselves, and they support companies in certain aspects. That's how they get paid, but they're not working for anyone. And now we're giving a whole new group of creatives a way to get out of the 9-to-5 rat race. They can go and do what they're passionate about and actually make a good living doing it, right? Like they can make 40, 50, 60, $100,000 creating art that people love, and they get to do it and build community around it as well with like-minded people that believe in them. And that's so amazing, and people aren't talking about it. It's there for the taking. Anybody can go and start doing it and just experimenting with the technology. And if you're not, I highly encourage you do it.
Yeah, there's plenty of free tools out there. You don't have to spend a bunch of money to learn this stuff. And to your point, best way is just to get involved. And whether that's like trying to create some NFTs yourself and experiment, or if that's, learning Solidity and some of the coding languages, or, even helping communities. Like running Discord servers is like a huge job that's popping up, and people are getting paid good money to keep people engaged on Discord. So there's like all these really interesting, as you said, like job opportunities and ways to make money that really do add value in a way that maybe folks with those skill sets previously wouldn't have been able to monetize.
Absolutely. And if you don't know where to start, just jump onto NFT Twitter, follow some main accounts that are credible, good operators, and very thoughtful in the space that share good quality
Who are your
content
go-tos?
and value. For me, so obviously Gary Vee is my main one. But there's one that not a lot of people in our community talk about that has been instrumental in opening up my mind to the possibilities of what NFTs are. And his name is Maddie, but his handle is DCL Blogger on Twitter. And it's just Maddie. He has his own project called the MetaKey. This is not sponsored, by the way. But he is absolutely an amazing thought leader. I believe he's based out of Australia. So I always wake up to a ton of tweets from him that were all scheduled in the middle of the night, Eastern time. But man, like he just does such a great job of engaging with his community, of just as he's coming up with these ideas similar to how we start having discussions and, like rolling in our brains, where he just goes and tweets them out and it's like, hey, think about this, or have you noticed this is happening? And every single one of his tweets gives so much value to just opening up your mind to what this technology is, what's actually happening in front of our eyes. And it blows my mind. So if you want to learn about the full depths of it, follow DCL blogger Maddie on Twitter, and Gary V does a great job of this as well. I think he's going to be more focused on bringing the attributes he's trying to give to the world, as well as helping people understand the technology and showing it through his projects over the next few years. He's been very focused on launching these projects because there's a lot that goes into them. But now Be Friends 2 is going to be finishing up this next month. That's going to be off his plate, and he can focus on just continuously giving value to people. So I think both of those are great go-tos. And if you start paying attention in their networks, you'll end up growing a Twitter following and following people that are relevant as well. And of course, you can follow me and Will as well.
Yeah, yeah. I like Chris Dixon too. He's a VC in the space. For obvious reasons, I follow a lot of VCs, so I get a lot of the investor take, which is interesting. If you're trying to build something in Web3 and you're not sure what to do, if you can build anything infrastructure-wise, you will have VCs knocking at your door right now, because that's really what's needed to be able to build the application layer that will allow some of the use cases that we've talked about, like NFT ticketing and all these different things that we will be coming in the future. But like infrastructure layers that, bridge things cross-chain, there's so many different areas that still need to be improved. So, yeah, but definitely like a lot of the investors in the space are really interesting to follow, because they obviously see a lot of different projects and companies.
That's a great point. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go through your Twitter following and try and find some of them. But to your point, I mean, that should tell you how early we are talking about this, and anyone who's listening to this. If we're talking about we need infrastructure, we're beyond early in a space. We don't even have the foundation built to start really seeing what this technology is capable of. And that's where we all come in, and we all have that responsibility to go in and just try stuff, try and learn. And if nothing else, pay attention and follow along. So when we do have that foundation built, you never know if you'll stumble upon an idea that can be built upon that foundation, or just be educated enough to operate within it. So you're not that person that doesn't know how to scan a QR code.
Exactly. Yeah. We're like pre-cloud computing. We're pre-AWS right now. Like AWS in Web3 hasn't been built yet. Whatever that looks like, right? That essentially Web3 is going to be built on top of. And maybe that's chain. Maybe it's something that, is a cross-chain solution, whatever. Who knows? Who knows what that looks like? But we haven't built that yet, which means that, all of the companies that wouldn't exist today without AWS, Facebook's, Canva, Twitter, none of these companies, they're even further away, right? Until we get the infrastructure down. So it's cool, to your point, right? We're so early. So
yes, I'm excited to see how it develops. I'm excited to see how the Ostrich App develops and plays in Web3 and experiments, and excited to see how everybody in our community continues to help push it forward. But it was great chatting with you, Will.
Yeah, it was great chatting to you as well, Gabriel, and honored to be the first guest. So I'm excited. I will be the first subscriber as well. And
I'll let you know when it's uploaded.
Happy to support however.
Absolutely. Well, good chatting with you, my man. We will talk soon. And for everybody listening, thank you so much for your support. And if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out. Take care.
Yeah. How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, on TikTok, pretty much everywhere as Gabriel C _NFT. So if you search Gabriel C _NFT across all social media platforms, I am consistent. You'll be able to find me.
Awesome. Yep. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at William P. Glass, the number 3. which is consistent across LinkedIn and Twitter, and then Instagram and TikTok is something different, but I don't really use those that much. So you can do that. And if you want to follow Ostrich, at Ostrich App, at the Ostrich App on all social media. So yeah, thanks for having me on,
Wonderful.
man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again soon.